My name is Sophia Miller, and I was only 19 when my father tried to erase my dignity in front of an entire ballroom. It was supposed to be a celebration the 23rd birthday of my sister Olivia. We were at a luxury hotel in Miami, Florida, a place dripping with chandeliers, marble floors, and waiters carrying silver trays of champagne. I wore a white dress that my mother insisted was too plain for the occasion, but I had no interest in competing with Olivia's sequined gown or her loud laughter that bounced across the room. I expected an evening of polite smiles music from a hired quartet and maybe a slice of cake. What I did not expect was the moment my father rose with a microphone in his hand and destroyed every shred of illusion that I belonged to this family. David Miller, my father, 52, a real estate businessman who loved power more than anything else, tapped the microphone until the chatter died down. 50 guests turned their eyes toward him. I froze when I heard his words, words that turned me from a daughter into a target. Tonight, he said proudly, my younger daughter Sophia will hand over the keys to her $5 million condo in Brickell to her sister Olivia as a gift for her new chapter in life. The room erupted with applause and gasps of admiration. My pulse hammered in my ears. My condo, the one my grandmother had placed in my name, a place I had guarded fiercely while starting my first year at the University of Miami. It was not his to give away, but in that moment, he acted like my life was another one of his business deals. I felt the weight of 50 stares. Olivia gasped, pressing her hand to her chest like she was shocked, but I saw the flicker of triumph in her eyes. My mother, Linda, standing by the cake table, smiled like a queen orchestrating her daughter's fate. A sick twist of reality wrapped around me. They had planned this. They wanted me humiliated into surrender. My throat burned, but I forced my voice out. No. The words sliced the silence like glass breaking. A murmur swept across the guests. Did she just say no? Whispers swarmed around me. Selfish girl. How ungrateful. My father's face darkened, his eyes narrowing until I could barely see the man I used to beg for approval. What did you say? His voice carried the tone of warning I had known all my life. I straightened my back, my legs trembling. I said no. This condo is mine. I earned it with my grandmother's trust, and I will not give it to Olivia. The air froze. Olivia's lips quivered in a mask of tears, but her shoulders shook with suppressed delight. The crowd watched like an audience waiting for blood. My father stepped closer, his frame towering over me. Then it came. His hand swung fast, crashing across my cheek with such force that I staggered backward. My pearl earring tore free and hit the marble floor, rolling under a table. Pain burst through my face, hot and sharp, but louder than the pain was the sound of the room. Gasps, a phone camera clicking, a guest whispering my, God, he hit her! I tasted metal on my lip and the burn spread across my skin. For a second, I saw the world tilt. I wanted to crumble, but something inside me rose instead. I refused to cry. I refused to give him that. I bent slowly, my knees steady despite the trembling inside, and I picked up the fallen earring. The smooth pearl rested cold in my palm. When I stood, I turned my gaze toward Olivia. She pressed her hand over her mouth like a fragile victim, but her eyes glittered with satisfaction. I smiled, not warm, but sharp as a blade. Happy birthday, Olivia. My voice was steady, deliberate, every syllable echoing through the stunned silence. I slipped the earring into my pocket, lifted my chin, and walked toward the heavy doors. Guests parted as if I carried fire. She is leaving, someone whispered. Another hissed, unbelievable. Behind me, my father shouted my name, his voice breaking through the chaos, but I did not stop. I pushed open the doors and stepped into the empty hallway, the sound of laughter and music muffled behind me. The marble wall pressed cold against my back as my chest rose and fell. My cheek burned, but my heart was beating steady now, strong in defiance. For the first time, I was not the obedient daughter. I was something else, someone who had finally said no. I pulled my phone from my clutch, my hands trembling but my voice clear when I spoke into the line. Anna. He did it. He struck me in front of everyone. My best friend answered with a gasp, her voice fierce through the speaker. "Stay where you are. We are not letting this end here." In that hallway, trembling yet unbroken, I knew the night was only beginning. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a family turn against one of their own in front of strangers? If you have, tell me in the comments below. I want to know if you have ever felt the same sting of betrayal. The sting on my cheek followed me into the silence of the hallway, but the truth was that pain had been chasing me far longer than that single night. I was 19, but the story of how I became the disposable daughter had been written years earlier back in Atlanta, Georgia, in the house where I grew up. The Miller home looked perfect from the outside. A brick colonial with white shutters and a manicured lawn, it stood as a symbol of my father's success. Neighbors admired us. They waved at David Miller in his tailored suits and praised my mother Linda's garden parties. They thought we were the portrait of family stability. Inside, though, was a very different reality. My earliest memory of knowing I was less came when I was 7. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind where thunder rolled across the Atlanta sky and the backyard turned into a swamp. I had spilled a glass of juice on the kitchen floor. My father's face tightened, his eyes sharp with disappointment. Without a word, he opened the back door and told me to stand outside until I learned how to be careful. I stood there shivering in my little dress, rain soaking my hair, while Olivia, only 11, came to the doorway. She smirked, then turned back inside. A few minutes later, I heard laughter. Dad had handed her a piece of cake, praising her for being the good daughter. That was the pattern. Olivia was praised for breathing. I was punished for existing. My mother, Linda, reinforced it with whispers that sounded like excuses but cut deeper than any shout. "You are the younger one, Sophia. You should learn to yield. Families work when someone sacrifices." It sounded like wisdom when I was small, but it was chains disguised as advice. By the time I reached middle school, Olivia was already being paraded as the star. She was entered into beauty pageants, given piano lessons, and when she won second place at a regional competition, my parents celebrated like she had cured cancer. When I brought home straight A's, my father barely glanced at the report card. My mother only said, "Grades are fine, but can you be more like your sister? Softer, warmer." I learned early that my ambition was not a gift, but a flaw. When Olivia turned 16, she was given a brand new car, a cherry red convertible parked in the driveway with a bow on top. I was 12, standing barefoot on the concrete, and I remember the way Dad's arm circled her shoulders while Mom cried happy tears. I clapped too, because that was what was expected. Inside, I told myself I would never depend on them for anything. That promise became the fuel that carried me through high school. I applied for scholarships and secret studied late into the night, and when other kids partied, I coded on my old laptop building small programs that would later help me get accepted into the University of Miami. My parents did not cheer when the acceptance letter came. My father barely looked up from his whiskey. He muttered, "Miami is far, too far for a girl." My mother sighed and said, "Well, Olivia needs you here more." She had failed 2 semesters at community college and spent most of her nights going out with friends. Yet somehow her failures never diminished her shine in their eyes. She was still the golden child, still the one they defended. I became the background character in my own life. The more I accomplished, the less they acknowledged. The turning point came when my grandmother Margaret stepped in. She had watched for years as my parents diminished me. Unlike them, she saw me, really saw me. She came from a different generation, sharp and uncompromising. After my grandfather passed, she controlled the family investments and properties. She called me to her house one day when I was 17. Her voice was clear, her gaze unwavering as she handed me a set of documents. "This condo in Miami, Sophia, is in your name now. It is not a gift to be stolen. It is security, your foundation. You will need it." At that moment, I did not fully understand, but I felt the weight of her trust. I promised her I would protect it, and I did. That condo became my sanctuary when I started college. It was more than marble floors and city views. It was proof that I was not invisible, that at least one person in my bloodline believed in me. But to my father and mother, it was simply another asset, something they could use to elevate Olivia, to give her what she could not build herself. That is why at the party in Miami, his announcement cut so deep. It was not just about property, it was about erasing the one piece of recognition I had ever received. They wanted to strip me of my grandmother's trust to turn my achievement into Olivia's free ride. That is why, when he raised his hand tonight, it was not the first blow. It was only the latest in a lifetime of them. And when I walked out of that ballroom clutching my phone with trembling fingers, I carried more than a bruise on my cheek. I carried the weight of years of being told I was less. Years of being shoved into the shadows while Olivia basked in the spotlight. This time, though, I was not 7 standing in the rain. I was 19, and I had a voice. When I stepped back into the ballroom after catching my breath, the music had stilled. The string quartet's bows hovered in midair, waiting for a signal from my father. The scent of expensive wine and catered hors d'oeuvres lingered cloying against the heavy silence that pressed down on the room. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me as if I were an intruder, not a daughter. My father, David Miller, gripped the microphone again, his smile stretched thin, his voice smooth in a way that carried menace beneath the charm. "Let us not misunderstand," he said, drawing out the syllables. "My younger daughter has always been a bit dramatic. Of course she will do the right thing for her sister." The applause that followed was hesitant, a ripple of clapping meant to smooth over what had already shattered. My stomach twisted. I could see Olivia standing near the cake table, her sequined dress catching the light, her hand delicately pressed against her cheek, as though she were embarrassed by the attention. But her eyes sought mine with a gleam of triumph, a silent dare. She wanted me to break. I felt the guests lean toward one another, whispering their voices low but sharp. Is she refusing? How selfish can a girl be? Poor Olivia, such a burden to carry a sister like that. My mother Linda slipped closer, her perfume heavy, her words sliding into my ear like a blade. "Do not humiliate your father. Think of the family name." She gripped my wrist lightly, a gesture that looked affectionate but tightened until I wanted to yank free. "You will give the condo. That is what family does." My chest heaved. Family. That word had become a weapon in her mouth. I pulled my wrist back, keeping my voice steady, though my body trembled. I said no. The guests stirred. Some gasped. A woman near the front, one of my father's business partners, pressed her lips together, eyes darting as though she had witnessed a crime. A man muttered, "Ungrateful child." Another voice hissed, "She owes them everything." My father's smile dropped, replaced by the scowl I knew from childhood. He lifted his glass, his tone louder, booming through the microphone. "Sophia, this is not a request. Your sister needs stability, and you are in no position to deny her. The condo is too much for you alone. You are young. You do not understand responsibility." Murmurs of agreement rolled through the crowd. Heads nodded. Even Cousin Tyler, who had barely graduated college, smirked at me as though he had earned the right to judge. My skin prickled with heat. I wanted to vanish, but a stronger voice inside urged me to stand taller. Olivia dabbed her eyes with a napkin, playing the role of fragile victim. Her fiancé, Jake, placed a hand on her shoulder, glaring at me as if I had broken some sacred code. The room became smaller with every stare, every whisper, every unspoken demand that I surrender. My father's hand clenched the microphone. He leaned toward me, his voice low but still amplified. "Do not disgrace me, Sophia. This is your moment to prove you care about this family." The words slammed into me. Prove you care. I had spent years caring, paying for groceries when my parents were short, covering Olivia's credit card bill once because she had cried about her ruined credit, taking on shifts at a bookstore while juggling classes. I had done everything, and it had never been enough. And now, in this room filled with polished marble and expensive gowns, they demanded the one thing that was truly mine. My throat ached. I felt the sting of humiliation crawling across my skin. They were not only stealing from me, they were branding me selfish, cold, unworthy of belonging. I scanned the room. Some guests looked away, unwilling to meet my gaze, afraid to align with me. Others leaned forward, hungry for the drama recording on their phones. The buzz of judgment was suffocating. It was as if I stood on trial, accused of betraying my own blood. I wanted to scream that it was betrayal the other way around. that it was cruelty wrapped in the disguise of family loyalty. But all I could manage was a voice that cut through the whispers. I will not give my condo. It is mine, and I will not be erased. My father's face flushed crimson. My mother hissed, "You are embarrassing us." Olivia's tears flowed faster, though her eyes still sparkled with satisfaction. The tension grew unbearable. Guests fidgeted their discomfort like static in the air. Some shook their heads in pity for Olivia, others glared at me as though I had committed a sin. I clenched my fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms, reminding myself that this was not weakness. This was survival. But the weight of so many eyes, so many expectations pressed until my knees nearly buckled. The humiliation was not just in my father's demand, but in the chorus of strangers who agreed with him. For them, wealth was meant to flow toward the golden child, not the invisible one. Their judgment was another slap quieter but no less cruel. In that moment, I realized that standing alone meant standing against not just my family, but an entire crowd eager to see me bend. Yet even as the pressure mounted, a flicker of something stronger ignited in me. I had endured years of whispers, years of being told I was not enough. This was the moment I chose to stop absorbing their poison. I stood my ground, my voice firm, though my body shook. No, I will not. The ballroom filled with a sharp collective inhale. The air thickened. My father's jaw tightened as he took a step toward me. My mother's eyes darted in panic. Olivia's mouth twisted her performance of sorrow, faltering into anger. The audience leaned closer, phones raised, breaths held. The pressure was unbearable, but it also clarified everything. This was not about family. It was about control, and I was done being controlled. The weight of the room pressed in on me like a storm about to break. My father's jaw flexed as he lowered the microphone, his steps deliberate as he crossed the polished floor toward me. Every inch of him radiated fury. He towered above me, the faint smell of whiskey on his breath mixing with the sharp tang of cologne. The crowd hushed. "You are defying me, Sophia!" He barked, each syllable echoing like a gavel striking. I felt my chest tighten, but I refused to bow my head. I lifted my chin instead, the sting of the earlier slap still burning across my cheek. I am not giving it away. His eyes narrowed to slits, his hand gripping the microphone so tightly the veins bulged along his wrist. You think you can humiliate me in front of my partners, in front of family, in front of everyone who matters. His voice grew louder until it filled every corner of the ballroom. My refusal is not humiliation. I shot back, my words trembling but sharp. It is truth. The condo is mine. I worked for it. I keep it. My father's face darkened until he looked less like a man and more like a shadow of rage. Then, without warning, his hand lashed out again. The crack of palm against skin cut through the silence like thunder. Pain exploded across my cheek sharper than before, driving me backward into the edge of a table. Glasses toppled wine spilled in red streaks across the white linen, splattering onto my dress until it looked like blood blooming in the fabric. Gasps erupted. A woman screamed softly. Someone near the front muttered, "Is he insane?" My knees buckled and I caught myself against the table, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. The room tilted not just from the blow, but from the humiliation that struck deeper. He had done it again, and this time in front of dozens of witnesses. I touched my face, feeling the heat and the sting, and when I pulled my hand back, there was a smear of red from my split lip. Phones lifted higher, red recording lights blinking like judgmental eyes. A man's voice whispered, "This is going live." Olivia pressed herself against our mother, her shoulders trembling with the performance of sorrow, but her lips curved almost imperceptibly in satisfaction. I caught at that flicker of triumph she could not conceal. "My mother!" Linda's eyes darted wildly, panic etched across her face. "Sophia, apologize to your father right now," she demanded, her voice shaking. "Do not make this worse. Worse." The word twisted in my chest. Worse than being struck like a criminal in front of strangers. Worse than being stripped of dignity for daring to say no. My father loomed closer, his hand still raised as though ready to strike again. "Give her the condo or you will regret it," he growled, his breath hot against my face. For a heartbeat, I thought he might hit me until I collapsed. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some stepping back, others glued to the spectacle. No one intervened. They watched as if my pain were theater. Something inside me hardened. I straightened slowly, ignoring the throbbing in my cheek, the sticky warmth on my lip. My pearl earring lay across the floor, glinting beneath the chandelier's light, a silent witness to the chaos. I bent, picked it up, and held it in my palm. My body shook, but my voice came out steady, almost calm. "No." The word rang louder than the slap. My father's nostrils flared, his chest heaving, but he froze as murmurs grew among the crowd. Some guests whispered that it had gone too far. Others raised their phones higher, capturing every second. A man near the bar muttered, "This is going viral." The tension thickened, choking the air. Olivia's facade cracked her eyes, narrowing as she realized her plan was unraveling. She had expected me to crumble. Instead, I stood. My mother reached for me again, her hands trembling, but I stepped back. "Do not touch me." The words sliced sharper than his hand. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes, not for me, but for herself, for the image of our family shattering before an audience. I turned slowly, scanning the sea of faces. Every gaze was a blade, every whisper a wound. Yet among the judgment, there was also disbelief, even outrage. I caught the eye of a young man near the back. His phone raised, his lips parted in shock. "This is unreal," he muttered, tilting the camera toward me. The world outside these walls was about to see the truth. My father knew it too. His fury was no longer just about me. It was about the collapse of control, the crumbling of reputation he had spent decades building. He lowered the microphone with a shaking hand, his knuckles white. The room held its breath. I slipped the pearl earring into my pocket, lifted my chin, and let my words fall like stones. "Happy birthday, Olivia." Her name hung heavy in the air, dripping with irony. Gasps rippled again, sharper now, some guests pressing hands to their mouths. Olivia's face crumpled into an exaggerated mask of tears, but the cracks were visible, the smirk threatening to return. I turned toward the door. My heels clicked against the marble, each step deliberate, echoing like defiance. The crowd parted reluctantly, some whispering, others simply stunned. "She is walking out." Someone hissed, "She is really leaving." I did not look back. The heavy doors swung shut behind me, muffling the murmurs, sealing me in a cocoon of silence. My heart pounded, my cheek throbbed, but something deeper surged within me. Power. For the first time in my life, I had not bowed. I had been struck, humiliated, painted as selfish, but I had chosen myself. And though my father's hand had left its mark, so had my refusal. It was a scar of freedom. Out in the hallway, the marble wall pressed cool against my back. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. The red dots of live streams flashed in my mind. The world was watching now. My family's cruelty was no longer a private wound. It was a public reckoning waiting to unfold. The hallway outside the ballroom was silent except for the distant thrum of music leaking through the doors, but my pulse roared in my ears. I slid down the wall, the marble cool against my back, and clutched my phone. My cheek was swollen, my lips split, my hands trembling so hard I could barely type. I pressed call. "Anna." I whispered when she answered. He hit me. He did it in front of everyone. There was a sharp inhale on the other end, followed by the steel in her voice. "Sophia, listen to me. You are not alone. Stay calm and call your grandmother." My stomach tightened. "She is in Atlanta," I murmured, still shaking. "It would take hours." "No." Anna cut in her words, urgent clear. "Not tonight. I saw on the newsfeed this morning that she is in Miami for the charity gala at the Ritz. She is 10 minutes away from you." I froze, my heart jolting. My grandmother, Margaret Reynolds, the only person in my bloodline who had ever defended me. She was 78 now, but still sharp, still powerful, still in control of the family's fortune. She was the one who had put the condo in my name because she knew exactly who my parents were. The thought of her presence sparked something fierce inside me. I scrolled quickly to her number. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. The line rang once, twice, then her voice came through, steady and strong. "Sophia." The moment I heard her, the tightness in my chest cracked. "Grandma, he slapped me. He told everyone the condo was Olivia's. I said no." He hit me again. There was silence, then the sound of her breathing, calm but heavy with rage. "Where are you?" "The hotel in Brickell." She did not hesitate. "Stay there. I am coming." Within minutes, I heard the distant sound of tires screeching against pavement. 30 minutes felt like an eternity, but Anna stayed on the phone, anchoring me with words that kept me from collapsing. "You are stronger than them, Sophia. Do not let their lies bury you." She reminded me of all the nights we had studied together, all the times I had doubted myself, and she had pulled me back up. Without her, I might have crumbled in that hallway. Then came the sound of heels clicking against marble. The heavy doors to the ballroom burst open, and my grandmother strode inside with her driver trailing behind her. Margaret Reynolds was a vision of defiance. Even in her evening gown from the charity gala with diamonds glittering at her throat and a silver cane in her hand, she carried herself like a queen entering a battlefield. Her eyes cut across the room like blades, silencing every whisper. She raised the cane once, striking it against the floor. "David." Her voice was low-controlled, edged with steel. "Explain to me why you dared to lay a hand on my granddaughter." The room fell into stunned silence. My father's face drained of color. My mother, Linda, stammered, "Margaret, it is not what it looks like." But my grandmother raised her hand, silencing her with a single gesture. "Do not insult me with excuses." She looked directly at Olivia, who froze mid-sob. "You stand there in a sequined dress pretending shock while you knew exactly what he planned. Do not think I cannot see through your performance." Gasps erupted among the guests. Phones lifted again. The atmosphere shifted instantly. It was no longer me against the room. It was Margaret and me against them all. She stepped further into the ballroom, her cane tapping rhythmically on the polished floor. I watched from the doorway, my heart pounding, my eyes stinging with the weight of her defense. For the first time that night, I felt the tide turning. Margaret turned to face the crowd. "Sophia is the only one of you who has built something with her own hands. She has earned every piece of her life without your handouts." Unlike some others, she added, her gaze slicing toward Olivia and then my parents. David swallowed hard, his posture shrinking. Linda's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Olivia's tears dried instantly, her eyes flashing with fury as her facade cracked. My grandmother raised her voice louder now, carrying across the ballroom. "If you ever raise a hand against her again, I will ensure you lose everything. Your reputation, your fortune, your name." My voice trembled as I finally stepped forward, standing beside her. The sight of me bruised lip split, standing tall next to Margaret's unshakable presence, sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd. They had expected me to walk away in shame. Instead, I stood shielded by the only ally who mattered. Olivia's fiancé, Jake, shifted uncomfortably, pulling his hand from her shoulder. He glanced at his phone, the live stream flashing across the screen, his jaw tight with dread. The crowd had come to witness my humiliation, but now they were watching a reckoning. Margaret lowered her cane, resting her hand over mine briefly. "You are not alone, Sophia." The words were for me, but she made sure everyone in the room heard them. My father tried to regain control, his voice trembling. "Mother, you are overreacting. She is just a child." Margaret snapped her gaze toward him, her eyes blazing. "She is not a child. She is stronger than you ever were, and if you think I will allow you to destroy her, you have forgotten who controls this family." The room vibrated with the impact of her words. Guests shifted uneasily, some lowering their phones, others whispering feverishly. The tide had shifted. The balance of power was no longer his. It was hers. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, it was mine too. The moment my grandmother's cane struck the marble floor a second time, the energy in the ballroom shifted. The string quartet had lowered their instruments completely, the waiters froze mid-stride, and the once confident hum of whispers turned into an uneasy silence. Margaret Reynolds was not a woman to be ignored, and everyone in that room knew it. Her presence cut through the glitter and gold like a blade. She stood tall despite her age, her silver hair swept back, her gown glittering under the chandelier, her cane steady in her hand. At 78, she radiated more power than my father ever had. David Miller's face was drained of color, his posture stiff with panic as he searched for words. "Mother, you do not understand," he stammered, sweat beading at his temple. "She defied me. She embarrassed me in front of everyone." Margaret's eyes narrowed until he faltered. "Do you hear yourself, David? You sound like a petty tyrant who has lost control of his toy. This is your daughter, not your property." He clenched his jaw, but the words died in his throat. My mother, Linda, tried next, her voice soft and syrupy, as though sugar could mask venom. "Margaret, please do not create a scene. We only want what is best for Olivia. Sophia is young, she does not understand responsibility." The guests nodded uneasily, some murmuring in agreement, clinging to the script my parents had fed them. But my grandmother was relentless. She turned her piercing gaze on Linda. "Best for Olivia," she repeated slowly, each word like a strike. "You mean best for yourself. You have coddled her into uselessness. A woman of 23 who cannot keep a job, cannot pay a bill, and still you place her on a pedestal. Meanwhile, Sophia at 19 studies full-time, lives independently, and carries herself with more dignity than either of you ever taught her." Linda flinched as though struck. Olivia, standing just behind them, dabbed her eyes with a napkin, her performance faltering. "Grandma, please!" She whimpered, her voice high and trembling, but the gleam of calculation in her eyes betrayed her. Margaret's expression hardened. "Do not insult me with crocodile tears, Olivia. I know you were part of this charade. I saw the flicker in your eyes when your father made his announcement. You expected her to surrender without a fight." Olivia's lips parted, but no words came. Her fiancé, Jake, shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the phones recording from every angle. The guests leaned in, some gasping, others whispering furiously, the weight of Margaret's words unraveling the carefully staged illusion. Margaret lifted her chin, her voice rising with iron authority. "Enough! I will not allow this family to destroy itself further. I am rewriting my will. Every dollar, every property, every investment will go to Sophia. She has proven herself. You three," she gestured at David, Linda, "and Olivia have proven only your greed and cruelty." The room exploded. Gasps rippled like waves. Some guests covered their mouths, others muttered in disbelief. Mrs. Larson, a family friend, clutched her purse and whispered, "She is giving it all to Sophia." Another man said, "This will be in tomorrow's papers." Olivia let out a strangled sob, collapsing into a chair. Jake pulled away from her, shaking his head, his jaw set in disappointment. He had seen enough. David staggered, gripping the back of a chair, his face pale sweat rolling down his neck. "Mother, you cannot be serious," he rasped. Margaret slammed the tip of her cane against the floor so hard the sound echoed like a gunshot. "I have never been more serious in my life. You raised your hand against your daughter, David. You tried to humiliate her in front of the world. Do you think that will go unpunished?" The silence that followed was heavier than the slap had been. Linda's eyes filled with tears, not of remorse, but of fear. She reached for David's arm, whispering, "Do something. Say something." But there was nothing left to say. The crowd had seen everything. Phones had captured the slap, the blood on my lip, the smugness in Olivia's eyes, and now the wrath of Margaret Reynolds laying waste to their facade. I stood beside my grandmother, my hands trembling but my spine straight. For once, I was not the silent shadow. I was the granddaughter who had finally been defended. Margaret turned back to the crowd, her voice firm. "To all of you recording, let this be a reminder. Wealth does not excuse cruelty. Reputation does not erase violence. What you saw tonight is the truth of this family." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces. "And I will not allow it to continue. Guests shifted, whispers growing louder, phones raised higher. Some even applauded softly, their claps hesitant but real. The tide had turned fully now. My father's empire of intimidation was collapsing in real time. Olivia's mask shattered completely. She leaned forward, her face twisted with desperation. "Grandma, please," she begged, her voice cracking. "I did not mean for this." Margaret's voice was cold. "You meant every second of it. You stood by as your father struck your sister. You reveled in it. That is not innocence. That is complicity." Olivia sobbed, her shoulders shaking, but Jake stepped away from her, sliding the engagement ring from her finger and placing it on the table without a word. Gasps erupted again. Olivia wailed, reaching for him, but he turned and walked out. The humiliation hit her like a physical blow. My father tried once more, his voice trembling. "Mother, think of the family's reputation." Margaret's reply was swift, merciless. "Reputation? You have already destroyed it." She gestured toward the glowing screens of the live streams. "By morning, this will be everywhere, and the only person who will walk out with dignity intact is Sophia." My heart ached and swelled at once. For years, I had dreamed of someone saying the words I could never get out. And now, in front of the very people who had judged me, my grandmother had spoken them. The reversal was complete. The golden child had been stripped of her crown, the tyrant father silenced, the complicit mother exposed, and me, the overlooked daughter, finally seen. Margaret turned to me, her eyes softer now but still burning with pride. "You are not alone, Sophia. This family has failed you, but I will not." Her hand pressed mine firm, grounding me. Tears stung my eyes, but I held them back. This was not the time for weakness. This was the time to stand in the light of her protection. The ballroom buzzed with chaos guests scrambling to process what they had witnessed. Some tried to comfort Olivia. Others whispered about David's business, already calculating the fallout. But none of it mattered. The power that had crushed me minutes earlier was gone. In its place was a silence filled with the weight of truth. For once, I was not the outsider. I was the center, and my father, for the first time, had no power to stop it. By the time the ballroom began to clear, the damage had already spread beyond those four walls. Phones had been held high for every second of my humiliation, every strike of my father's hand, every cold word from my grandmother. Clips were already flooding onto TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. I knew it the moment I stepped back into the hallway and felt my phone buzzing nonstop in my palm. Notifications stacked one after another, a digital avalanche. At first, I could not look. My lip throbbed, my cheek pulsed, my body still shook from adrenaline. But curiosity pulled me in. I swiped open the screen, and the first video filled my feed. There I was, frozen on the screen, my father towering over me, his hand raised, the sound of the slap echoing. Gasps filled the background, someone whispering, "This is unreal." Then came the second clip, me picking up my pearl earring, straightening my voice, low but clear. "Happy birthday, Olivia." That phrase alone had been replayed thousands of times. The captions beneath were merciless. "This is what abuse looks like. A father who slaps his daughter for saying no. Justice for Sophia." Comments flooded by the hundreds. "Disgusting behavior. That poor girl deserves better. Send this man to jail." My chest tightened, torn between vindication and exposure. For years, my pain had been invisible. Now it was everywhere. By morning, the views had already hit millions. News anchors picked it up, showing stills of my father's hand mid-swing, my stunned face, my grandmother storming into the room. One headline read, "Real estate mogul strikes daughter in public over $5 million condo." Another said, "Miami party turns violent family secrets exposed." My father's empire was cracking. In Houston, where he had been negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract, his partners issued statements condemning violence, distancing themselves immediately. Within days, the deal collapsed. My mother's social circle fell apart just as fast. The women who had once flocked to her luncheons now avoided her calls, their names vanishing from her contact list. We cannot be associated with this one text leaked online showing exactly how quickly her allies had abandoned her. Olivia suffered too. Friends she had paraded through social events unfollowed her, their feeds suddenly filled with subtle jabs. Memes circulated showing her fake crying face at the party, the caption reading, "Oscar goes to Olivia Miller for best performance in family betrayal." Worst of all, Jake, the man she thought would marry her. The live stream had shown him backing away, ring in hand, leaving it on the table. That moment became its own viral clip titled, "Fiancé Walks Out Mid-Scandal." Within hours, the comments shredded her. He dodged a bullet. Good for Jake. Run, man, run. Olivia stayed quiet publicly, but I heard from mutual acquaintances that she locked herself inside her apartment for days, curtains drawn, refusing to answer the phone. The golden child had lost her shine. Meanwhile, my inbox overflowed. Strangers sent messages of support. Survivors of toxic families told me their stories. Students wrote that they admired my courage for saying no. It was overwhelming, the flood of voices reminding me I was not as alone as I had believed. Yet the weight of it pressed heavy too. Every time I saw my father's hand frozen in a screenshot, every replay of the slap my chest seized. I had wanted freedom, not fame, but justice rarely came quietly. One night, scrolling through the endless feed, I paused on a comment that read, "Sophia, if you see this, know that we believe you. Don't let them silence you." My eyes stung. For years, I had begged for just one person to stand with me. Now thousands of strangers did. Still, the outrage did not stop at sympathy. Protesters even gathered outside one of my father's offices in downtown Miami holding signs that read, "No excuse for abuse and protect daughters, not reputations." The pressure mounted until he could no longer ignore it. Reporters camped outside the mansion in Atlanta, cameras ready. When he finally emerged, his face was pale, his words scripted. "This was a private family misunderstanding blown out of proportion," he said. The backlash was instant. Commentators mocked him, dissecting his phrasing. Private misunderstanding. The phrase trended as a meme. Screenshots of my bruised face appeared beside it with captions like, "This is not private. This is violence." Each excuse only dug him deeper. My mother tried too, issuing a soft statement about family unity, pleading that the media was cruel to exploit our struggles. That collapsed as well. One journalist dug up her past interviews, bragging about being a perfect mother, contrasting it with the footage of her demanding, "I apologize," after being hit. The hypocrisy was too glaring to survive. Within 2 weeks, our family name had become a synonym for cruelty in comment sections. Strangers tagged me constantly, sending me links. "Justice will come. Stay strong." The power my father once wielded with his name was now poison. Olivia's fall was perhaps the sharpest. Jake's family, embarrassed by the scandal, issued a statement of their own, clarifying he had broken off the engagement. They called the Miller family unstable and unsuitable for ties. Olivia spiraled further, her reputation shredded by the very community that had once adored her. I read it all in silence, the glow of my phone lighting my condo at night. Each article, each comment felt like waves crashing against the walls of the old life I had known. For so long, their control had defined me. Now the world was holding them accountable. It was not just justice. It was a reversal so public they could never undo it. Yet even with that satisfaction, a hollow ache gnawed inside me. I had wanted my parents to see me, to love me. Instead, they had lost me. And maybe that was justice too. It was a humid evening in Miami when the knock came. I had been curled on the sofa of my Brickell condo, the skyline glittering beyond the glass walls, trying to finish a paper for my psychology class. My phone buzzed constantly with new articles, new clips, new comments, and I had turned it face down to breathe in silence. Then came the sharp rap on the door. I froze. Few people knew my address. Anna had a key, my grandmother had one too, but neither of them knocked like that. I rose slowly, my bare feet silent against the cool tile, and peered through the peephole. My chest tightened. David and Linda stood outside. My father looked smaller than I had ever seen him. His shoulders slumped, his suit wrinkled, his eyes sunken. My mother clutched her purse to her chest as though it could shield her, her lips trembling. Against my better judgment, I opened the door just enough to face them. "Sophia." My father said, his voice low, raw, stripped of the booming authority he once carried. "We need to talk." My mother nodded quickly, her eyes red as though she had been crying for days. "Please, Sophia, just hear us." My grip on the doorknob tightened. I wanted to slam it shut, but a part of me, the old part that had spent years craving their approval, kept me rooted. I stepped back reluctantly, allowing them into the pristine space my grandmother had given me, the place they had tried to steal. They sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, glancing at the award on my shelf, the photographs of me and Anna, the stacks of textbooks on the coffee table. My father cleared his throat. "Sophia, I made a mistake." His words stumbled like stones in his mouth. "The pressure at that party, the guests, the deals on the line," I snapped. "But you must understand, it was not meant to hurt you like this." I stood across from them, arms crossed, cheeks still faintly bruised, though weeks had passed. "You struck me in front of 50 people, I said quietly. "You demanded I surrender my home to Olivia. You call that a mistake?" He flinched, his eyes flicking to the floor. "Your grandmother has rewritten everything," he said bitterly. "You hold all the cards now, but you could still help us, Sophia. If you give the condo to Olivia, if you show the world we are united, perhaps we can salvage something." My mother reached for my hand, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, families fall apart when anger wins. You can end this. Please do not let outsiders destroy us." My throat tightened with disbelief. Outsiders, as if the real wound came from strangers online and not from the people sitting in front of me. I pulled my hand back sharply. "You destroyed us," I whispered, my voice rising with every syllable. "You destroyed us when you treated me like nothing, when you chose Olivia again and again, when you raised your hand against me in front of the world." My mother's tears spilled, her face contorted. "Sophia, we are sorry. We lost control. We only wanted what was best for Olivia." The words snapped something in me. "Best for Olivia," I repeated, my voice shaking with fury. "Always Olivia. Always her comfort, her future, her needs. What about mine? Have you ever once said you wanted what was best for me?" The silence that followed was heavier than any apology. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes filled with shame, but also resentment, the kind that clung like poison. He could not admit it even now. My mother sobbed into her hands. For a moment, the girl inside me ached to reach out to bridge the gap, but the woman I was becoming stood firm. I stepped back, my hand on the door. "No, I will not give her the condo. I will not save your reputation. I will not pretend this family has not broken me." My voice hardened into steel. "You chose her over me, again and again. Now, I choose myself." Their faces twisted, a mix of desperation and defeat. My father stood slowly, his shoulders sagging. "If that is how it must be," he muttered, "then we have nothing left to say." My mother whispered through her tears, "Sophia, please do not turn your back on us." I opened the door wide, the humid Miami night pressing in. "You turned your back on me long ago." I gestured for them to leave. They hesitated, then shuffled out into the hallway, their figures small against the glow of the exit sign. I closed the door firmly, the click echoing through the condo. My heart pounded my chest tight, but I felt lighter than I ever had. For the first time, I had closed the door on them, not the other way around. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up, staring at the stream of messages from strangers, from allies, from people who believed me. And then I typed a single post: "I will not apologize for protecting myself. I will not surrender what is mine. Some families do not heal, and that is okay." The words went viral within hours. The morning after I closed the door on my parents, the sunlight over Miami felt different. It was warm on my face through the wide windows of my condo, but instead of comfort, it brought a heavy clarity. The storm had not passed, it had only shifted. My phone buzzed relentlessly with new clips, new articles, new commentary. Some celebrated my courage, others demanded accountability. Among the flood of notifications, one message stood out. It was from Anna. "We need to talk about next steps. You cannot let this rest. I met her at a cafe near campus, a quiet place with wooden tables and the smell of strong Cuban coffee drifting through the air. She hugged me tightly, her eyes scanning the bruise still faint on my cheek. We cannot just let them spin this, she said firmly. They will try. They always try. We need to get ahead. My chest tightened. What do you mean? Anna leaned closer, her voice low. We go to the authorities. We file. We make it official. That way they cannot rewrite what happened. My pulse quickened. The thought of walking into a courthouse, of putting everything into legal language, terrified me. But Anna's eyes were steady, anchoring me. This is not just for you, she said. It is for every girl watching who thinks she has to take it. My grandmother Margaret arrived soon after her driver waiting outside. Even in daylight, even without the grandeur of chandeliers and ballrooms, she carried authority like a crown. She set her cane beside her chair and ordered tea, then looked at me with the kind of calm that steadied storms. Your friend is right, she said. We will not wait for them to twist this. We will act. Within hours, we were sitting in the office of a Miami attorney, a woman named Carla Jimenez with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She listened without interrupting as I described the party. The announcement, the slap, the second slap, the blood, the phones raised, the crowd frozen. Anna added her perspective, pulling out screenshots, saved clips, timestamps. Margaret filled in the history, her voice like iron, describing years of favoritism and gaslighting. When I finished, Carla leaned back, tapping her pen against the desk. This is not just family drama, she said. This is domestic violence, plain and simple. The court will see it. She opened her laptop, typing swiftly. The first step, she explained, was filing for a restraining order. It would protect me legally, forbidding my father from contacting or approaching me. The evidence was overwhelming: the live streams, the photographs, the eyewitness accounts. A restraining order, she said, is not just protection. It is a message. My hands trembled as I signed the paperwork. It felt unreal, putting my name beneath those words. Victim, protected party, respondent David Miller. The attorney filed the documents immediately. Within days, I stood in the Miami-Dade County Courthouse, the air heavy with the smell of old wood and paper. The judge, a stern woman with silver glasses, reviewed the evidence quietly. She watched the video, the crack of the slap echoing even in that solemn room. She paused when she saw me straighten, pick up my earring, and whisper, "Happy birthday, Olivia." Her lips pressed together tightly. When the clip ended, she looked at my father, who sat across the aisle, his suit pressed, but his face drawn, sweat glistening at his temple. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice firm, "it is the decision of this court that a restraining order be placed against you. You are forbidden from contacting your daughter, Sophia Miller, in any way. You will remain at least 500 feet from her at all times. If you violate this, you will be arrested immediately." The gavel struck. My chest lifted, my breath catching. For the first time, there was a wall between us, something stronger than fear, stronger than blood. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes flicked to me, but he said nothing. The power he had wielded my entire life was gone, replaced by the authority of the court. Outside, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward. "Sophia, how do you feel about the ruling? Do you believe justice is being served?" Margaret's hand gripped mine, guiding me through the crowd. Anna walked close on my other side, shielding me from the flashes. I did not answer their questions. My silence was enough. The world had seen. The law had acted. That night in my condo, I scrolled through the headlines. Judge grants restraining order against David Miller. Viral party assault leads to legal consequences. My face appeared beside my father's, the contrast stark. Me, young, bruised, but standing. Him, pale eyes downcast, no longer the untouchable businessman. Olivia's name surfaced too. With the legal documents filed, my grandmother moved swiftly. She called her attorney, ordering amendments to her estate plan. Olivia, she declared, is to be removed entirely. She is complicit. Everything goes to Sophia. The news hit Olivia like a second blow. Friends reported she screamed when she learned that she smashed a vase in her apartment, that she begged Jake to return, but he had already cut her off. She was unraveling her reputation, shredded her future, stripped her inheritance gone. For me, the restraining order was more than paper. It was a shield. For the first time, I slept without checking the locks 3 times, without waking to phantom footsteps. I felt the weight lift, if only slightly. Yet the ache lingered too. Justice came with scars. I touched my cheek in the mirror, the faint bruise fading, but the memory burned fresh. The law had spoken, but healing would take longer. Still, I whispered to my reflection, "You did not bow. You did not break." And for the first time, I almost believed it. 6 months later, the air in Miami felt lighter. The heat of summer had settled over the city, the ocean breeze slipping through the streets of Brickell where my condo tower rose against the skyline. From my balcony, I could see the water shimmer under the evening sun, a reminder of how far I had come since that night in the ballroom. The scar on my lip had faded, but the memory of my father's hand never would. Yet I no longer carried it as a wound. It had become a mark of survival proof that I had stood my ground. Life had changed in ways I never imagined. At the University of Miami, I poured myself into my studies. Weeks before, I had been honored at an academic ceremony receiving the award for Outstanding First-Year Student. When my name was called, the applause had felt like a balm, each clap a reminder that my worth could be recognized without condition. Anna had sat in the front row, cheering louder than anyone, her grin wide and unwavering. My grandmother Margaret stood beside her regal, even in her simple dress, her cane resting against her knee, her eyes gleaming with pride. They were my anchors, the family I had chosen, and the family that had chosen me back. The condo had become more than just marble floors and glass walls. It was my sanctuary. I decorated it with photographs of people who lifted me instead of tearing me down. Anna and I cooking together in the kitchen, Margaret telling me stories about her youth. Even quiet snapshots of me studying at the desk, my hair a mess, textbooks piled high. It was not just a place to live. It was proof of resilience. Meanwhile, the Miller name collapsed. My father's contracts evaporated one after another. Clients in Houston, New York, and even Atlanta walked away unwilling to attach their reputation to his. News outlets continued to dig into his past, unearthing stories of temper and intimidation that had once been hidden. The restraining order ensured he stayed far from me, his calls unanswered, his letters returned unopened. My mother drifted into obscurity too. Her charity luncheons dwindled until no one attended. Photos of her once glittering events were replaced by empty tables and silent halls. Friends who had once clung to her status now ignored her texts. She had built her life on appearances, and when the mask cracked, nothing remained. Olivia's fall was the sharpest. She lost her fiancé, her friends, and the inheritance she had expected as her birthright. Rumors spread that she tried moving to Los Angeles for a fresh start, but doors closed there too. The internet had not forgotten. Every time she tried to reappear, the clip resurfaced her crocodile tears, my father's slap, Margaret's thunderous decree. She had become a cautionary tale, not a star. Part of me pitied her, but only briefly. She had stood silent while I was humiliated, and silence is its own cruelty. Justice had come for each of them in a way no one could deny. And yet justice alone did not heal me. Healing came slowly through late-night talks with Anna, through cups of tea with my grandmother, through mornings when I woke to the sound of the city and felt safe. I learned to cook new recipes, to laugh without fear of judgment, to sit in silence without dread. I learned that family is not always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it is the ones who show up when the world falls apart. Margaret and Anna showed up. They stitched my broken pieces together with patience and love. One evening, sitting on the balcony, Anna leaned back in her chair and asked, "Do you ever think you will forgive them?" The question hung in the humid air. I thought of my father's eyes the moment the gavel struck the bitterness, the shame. I thought of my mother's trembling hand at my door, begging me to save the family name. I thought of Olivia's smirk the second before my humiliation and the way she collapsed when the inheritance vanished. Forgiveness, I said slowly, is not the same as forgetting. Maybe someday I will forgive them enough to release the anger, but I will never forget, and I will never let them back into my life. Anna nodded, her gaze steady. "That is enough," she said. "You do not owe them anything." My grandmother, who had been listening quietly, tapped her cane gently against the floor. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. You decide when or if it comes. Until then, you live free. Her words settled deep in me, grounding me. I realized then that closure is not always reconciliation. Sometimes closure is the door closing firmly and finally never to open again. Months later, I received an email from a nonprofit organization. They had seen my story, the viral clips, the interviews that followed the court case. They invited me to speak at a small conference about resilience and self-worth. At first, I hesitated. Standing in front of strangers reliving the pain terrified me, but Anna and Margaret encouraged me. "Tell your story," they said. "Someone out there needs to hear it." I agreed. On the day of the conference, I stood at the podium, the lights hot on my face, the crowd silent. My voice shook at first as I recounted the night in the ballroom, the slap, the humiliation, the pearl earring glinting on the floor. But as I spoke, strength rose. I told them about the restraining order, about the inheritance shift, about the way justice had come not through silence but through defiance. I ended with words that had lived in me since that night. Family is not always safe. Blood does not guarantee love. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. When I stepped off the stage, the applause thundered, not polite, but powerful. People stood. Some wept. Others reached for my hand, whispering their thanks. In that moment, I understood something my father never had. Real power is not built on fear. It is built on truth. Later that evening, back on my balcony, I looked at the city glowing beneath me. My phone buzzed with messages again this time from women who had been inspired, who had said no to their own toxic ties, who had found courage in my story. My heart swelled with something I had not felt in years. Peace. I realized then that the condo was more than a fortress. It was a symbol, not of wealth but of survival. It stood because I had stood. It was mine because I had chosen myself. As the night deepened, I whispered into the wind a promise to myself and to anyone listening. I will never again be silent. I will never again be small. I will live fully and freely no matter who disapproves. That is justice. That is victory. And if you have ever been forced to choose between yourself and a family that hurts you, choose yourself. Always. When I whispered those words into the Miami night, I was not only speaking to myself, I was speaking to you. Yes, you who are watching this right now, sitting in your living room, maybe with a cup of coffee cooling on the table, maybe with the weight of your own story pressing on your chest. I have shared mine with you, every bruise, every betrayal, every moment when silence threatened to break me. And I wonder how many of you have been where I was. Have you ever been told by the people who should have loved you most that you were less, that your voice did not matter, that your needs could be erased for the comfort of someone else? Have you ever sat in a room full of family and felt like a stranger, invisible, until they wanted something from you? If you have, I want you to know this. You are not alone. I thought I was. For years, I believed my suffering was private, unique, a shame I had to carry quietly. But the moment those clips went online, the moment strangers reached out to me, I learned a truth that freed me. There are thousands, maybe millions, who know the sting of toxic love, the suffocating weight of control, the ache of being silenced by blood. So I ask you now, what was your moment? Was it the time your voice was dismissed at the dinner table? Was it the time you were told to sacrifice again and again while your sibling or cousin was showered with praise? Was it the day you realized that no matter how much you gave, it would never be enough? If you are brave enough, share it in the comments. Your words might be the light someone else needs. And if you are not ready, that is okay too. Just write, "I understand." That simple phrase can connect you to others who have walked the same road, because connection is where healing begins. When I look back on that night, I remember the heat of my father's hand, the gasp of the guests, the glint of the pearl earring sliding across the floor. But what I remember even more is the choice I made. I chose not to bow. I chose to walk out. I chose to call Anna. I chose to answer Margaret. Every step was terrifying, but every step carved a path away from control and toward freedom. What choice will you make? Maybe it is not about a $5 million condo. Maybe it is smaller but just as heavy. Maybe it is saying no to a demand that has drained you for years. Maybe it is refusing to play the role they cast you in. Maybe it is closing the door literally or figuratively on someone who only calls when they need, never when they want to love. Tell me, what choice are you ready to make? And let me ask you something more personal. If you were sitting across from me right now, if we were sharing that balcony view together, and I asked you who in your life has been your Margaret, your Anna, the one who reminded you that you are not alone, what name would come to your lips? Think of them. Write their name below. Honor them in this moment. And if you cannot think of anyone, if no face comes to mind, then let this be the start of something new. Say it aloud, even if it feels strange. I choose myself. Type those words. Post them. Let the world see that you will not be silenced. I know for many of you speaking out feels impossible. You are older. You have lived through decades where silence was survival. Maybe you have endured a marriage that eroded your spirit. Maybe you sacrificed dreams for children who turned away. Maybe your own parents left wounds you never dared to name. And now you are 50, 60, 70, and you wonder if it is too late. Let me tell you this clearly, it is never too late to choose freedom. It is never too late to speak your truth. It is never too late to live without fear. If I could stand in that ballroom at 19 and say no with my father's rage bearing down on me, you can say no too wherever you are, however old you are. Do you believe that? Do you believe it is not too late? Say it with me in the comments. Not too late. I want you to picture something. Picture a door. On one side are all the demands, the insults, the manipulations, the slaps, whether physical or verbal. On the other side is you freestanding in the light. The only thing between is the choice to close it. Have you closed it yet? Or are you still standing there, hand hovering, afraid of what silence might mean? I want you to imagine closing it right now. Imagine the click of the lock. Imagine the silence that follows. How does it feel? Write it down. Describe it. Let others feel the strength in your words. And if you are sitting there thinking, Sophia, you do not understand. My story is too messy, too painful, too complicated. Let me remind you, so was mine. My story had public slaps, viral humiliation inheritance battles. Yours may not, but pain is pain. Control is control. Betrayal is betrayal. And your story matters. Share it if you can. Hold it close if you must. But do not believe for a second that you are the only one. Now let us talk about justice. My justice came in the form of a restraining order, in the rewriting of a will, in the collapse of reputations. Yours may look different. Maybe justice is leaving quietly and never looking back. Maybe it is building a new circle of friends who treat you like family. Maybe it is therapy journaling prayer. What does justice look like for you? Can you describe it? If you can share it. Because saying it aloud, even in the safety of a comment section, can be the first step to making it real. And one more thing. Gratitude. In the darkest moments, gratitude feels impossible, but it is also what saves us. I had Anna who answered the phone when my voice broke. I had Margaret who stormed into that ballroom with her cane and her thunder. Who do you have? Who has held your hand, listened to your story, carried your weight when you could not? Write their name. Or, if you have no one yet, write mine. Write Anna's, write Margaret's. Let us stand with you. I will leave you with this. I am 19, but I feel older now. Older because I know what it means to be betrayed by blood. Older because I know what it means to be lifted by chosen family. Older because I have looked at the edge of silence and decided to speak. If my story has touched you, if you see yourself in any part of it, do not stay silent. Leave a comment. Share this video. Subscribe so you do not miss the next story, because every time we tell the truth, we make the silence weaker, and silence has ruled long enough. So I ask you right now, before you scroll away, before you close this page, tell me, what is your story? Have you chosen yourself yet? And if not, what is stopping you? I am Sophia Miller. This is my truth, and I cannot wait to read yours.